Earlier this year, my platoon mate here, Doc, decided to give the American Heavy line a shot while the Tier 5s were on a deep discount, so I figured I'd pick up a T1 Heavy myself and roll along with him. What followed was a truly disgusting degree of seal clubbing that resulted in a number of absolutely cracking games, of which this is one of the finer highlights. I felt comfortable recommending the line to Doc as I recalled it being a very entertaining grind, especially down here in the bottom tiers, and results like this really illustrated just why. I don't know if I was simply lucking out or if it's actually something in the code, but it seems like Tier 5 Heavies have remarkably gentle matchmaking, as glorious top-tier ruffle stomps like this were not a rare occurrence for us, and when it's top-tier like this, the T1 Heavy's hit point pool and sheer physical presence really allows it to just throw its weight around and bully the lesser tanks around it, taking advantage of the good mobility you see here to get into favourable early positions and just pounce on vulnerable targets, in a way that a KV-1 would struggle to do, for instance. Now, knowing that the T1 Heavy is incredibly soft and that gun is none too accurate, the first order of business was to use our speed to get into the city, cut down the fields of fire in on us. If we can control engagements with hard physical cover, that really extends the life expectancy of it. Understandably, given its hit point pool and rate of fire, very few tanks can go toe-to-toe one-on-one with the T1 Heavy tank in equal tiering. So using these streets to ambush isolated targets is really the order of business here. As the old saying goes, you wouldn't want to meet it in a dark alley. Now I'd opted to go around this eastern plaza even though it is fairly open, simply because the western side is where the spawns are and there'd be more enemies in the western side of the city with nastier guns than the small targets that I'm taking advantage of here. As you can see on the minimap, if I'd been crossing the western side, that little opening there, I'd be facing off against the OI and Panzer IVH's guns, which would be a lot more detrimental to my health, so I instead opt to go on the eastern side, where I can push up the alley on the D line, take care of the OI experimental without backup from the Panzer IVH, essentially setting up a series of engagements where I get to bully tanks one at a time. Because I've got a lot of health but I don't have a lot of armor, and sustained concentrated fire from the enemy will cut me down entirely too quickly to be effective. And now that the token resistance to the east is gone, I'm free to start moving in on the west, start putting pressure on that OI I mentioned. I can safely ignore that Type 95 because the gun on it is truly pathetic, so I'm just pulling back, restricting the fire on me, and just picking off shots on the side of that OI experimental, which is actually ridiculously soft. My 128mm is easily enough to cut through it, and his rate of fire is too low to get more than one shot off on me. Now, although this heavy plays like a medium, as you can see it is still a heavy. That combination of decent frontal armor, good weight, and an excellent power-to-weight ratio means that you can bully things, ramming them from almost a standing start. This tank weighs almost 60 tons, so it doesn't just look like a sumo wrestler, it fucking acts like one. Don't be afraid to use that, shunt your enemies, headbutt them, just keep ramming them to do damage, keep them tracked, throw their aim off. It's a very, very handy thing you can do with this. At this stage of the game we're in a pretty good position. I've got 4 kills, 1 on that nasty OI experimental, 2 on Panzer IVDs, 1 on a Type 95 Heavy, softer targets for the most part, but luckily my team has stayed alive long enough to distract the rest of the enemy. So we're down to the cleanup stage of the game and I've still got 2/3 of my hit points. But even if things have gone pretty sour with the rest of the team, I could have just made use of the city to pull the enemy in and hopefully just get a series of one-on-one duels. On this map it's not that hard to cut down on those fields of fire and really mitigate the enemy's advantage of numbers. So if things had gone worse for my team, there's a chance I could have actually come out of this game with an even better result. But I'd have to be a monstrous arsehole to complain about winning a game convincingly. As it is, I've had the luxury of getting to feast on some of the higher health targets, without at any point really being challenged in any serious way. I've never had more than one dangerous gun trained on me at any one time, as my opponents have either been too distracted by other tanks to shoot me, or locked off by solid cover. And now it's simply a matter of chasing damage as the game closes. So again, I get to heap praise on the T1 Heavy tank's mobility. At the closing stage of the game, I've actually got the speed that I can chase down some of this damage and try and wrest it from the rest of my team. And it's nice driving a heavy tank that's quick enough that it allows you to be an opportunistic vulture at the close of the game. I simply cannot rate the value of mobility highly enough. It allows you to get into position quick enough to do damage early, it allows you to roam around and pick up damage late, and during the progress of the game it gives you the freedom of movement to be where you need to be to put damage in where it's most valuable. which is in and of itself perhaps the single greatest factor in determining your ability to influence the outcome of a game. So as you can see, the game turned out pretty well for me. 11,000 WN8 and a whole slew of medals there, including a steel wall, because when this thing is top tier, beating up on tier 3s and 4s, you can actually bounce a lot of damage. And I have to say that this sort of game was not a rare occurrence during the grind. The T1 is a fantastic all-rounder. The durability and damage output of this tank is enough to carry you through when your team does badly, and the mobility allows you to compete with your team for damage when it comes to those games where your team does well, so that you're not left begging for table scraps. So, in fair weather as in foul, this vehicle gives you everything you need to remain competitive. Definitely worthwhile. As far as tier 5 goes,